I'm about to mute my mic, Matt. I'm out of here.
All righty. Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone out there, no matter where you are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Daily Motion, YouTube. We're so excited to have you here. We're going to have some great speakers talking about a variety of subjects, but our main theme tonight is what is Tennessee going to look like coming out of this pandemic? And I say coming out of, but I'm fully aware that we will never return fully back to normal. We will be moving into a new world, a world that will have differences than what we knew back in December and January. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. That's what we are advocating for. We're advocating for coming out of this with better structures, coming out of this with structural change, because we knew that we needed it before. We need it even more than ever now. People need health care. That's why health care is a human right. If you have questions that you want to ask any of our guests tonight, please drop those in the chat. If you have comments or anything like that, please drop it in the chat if you're here on Zoom with us. If you're watching on some other platform, if you're on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or what have you, please ask your question there and we'll see it and we'll make sure to answer your question. So again, thank you all for coming. My name is Matthew Park. I'm running for the Tennessee State House here out of District 15, which is in Knoxville. District 15 covers everything from Holston Hills all the way to Fort Sanders, and then the Old City, Burlington, and South Knoxville within the city. So again, so excited to have you here. We're fighting for prison abolition. We're fighting for expanded healthcare coverage and access. We're fighting for public schools and a real raise for our public school teachers. And we're fighting for a Tennessee Green New Deal. We're done waiting for the federal government to move forward on their Green New Deal, although we're still advocating for that. But we recognize that we can do a lot here in Tennessee. We can do things like start the Tennessee Conservation Corps up here. We'll talk more about that, but right now I want to pass it on over to Constance Every to give us her thoughts on what the world might look like coming out of this, what we might need to build and tear down and get ready for over the next 6 or 12 months. Go ahead, Constance.
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that. I was trying to run us a live video in Black Lives Matter page, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get it up in time to, oh, wait, maybe it is. Here it is. Start this. Here we go. I think I got this one. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm coming out of here. Let me get out of this. Okay, my bad. So, yeah, thank you for having me. As always, we're allowing Black Coffee to participate in the rally calls for virtual outcry from the public. I represent the organization Black Coffee, which is a 501c4 social justice organization. And as Matt said, that as we are I saw today that there's supposed reports that we are flattening our curve. We have actually successfully supposedly did flatten our curve. And there are many concerns about the choices that Glenn Jacob is making with this decision to open up businesses. I think people have a fair right to be concerned about that. As we know that just because we are flattening our curve doesn't mean that we're really out of the clear. Which I think for many people is the bigger concern. So with that being said, I think the main thing that at this point in time, when we talk about Tennessee and what we can get from here is number one, as I already been emphasizing, our local government here gave out roughly $700,000 to our local zoo. And in reality, we should have maybe put those resources in better places, such as to the organizations like CAC, which is a service resource organization. And with them having an increase in their own requests for bill pay, particularly, I feel like they're going to need more funding than $1,000 that they were given. I'm sorry, $100,000. I also thought that the funding could have went into a better resource of organizations like Next Step Initiative, who are working on ground zero, directly affecting those that have been the most impacted by coronavirus outbreak, which is our homeless population. It's a very crime shame that they only received $1,000 towards their efforts. So what I would like to see coming into the future of recovery of coronavirus is a reevaluation on all levels of our government, particularly with our taxpayer funding and how we're spending that money. And on the other side of the fence, our state legislation of the Board of Education. There are many questionable things that they're talking about trying to do with our future budgeting of our school system. And one of the concerns that many of us have is our kids that are in these public city schools being cut out or even left out of the budgeting write-ups, and making sure that these kids are receiving adequate funding and resources for their schools as well as they return back to the school year. Some of the areas that are going to be heavily impacted were already areas that were heavily impacted in the first place, especially in our reading and mathematics. Now we just had a whole school year canceled out. So I guess my question would be for the school board is, if you're not going to provide more funding, then what is the game plan to get these children caught up with the next levels as those who went to more fluid, more better, well-funded schools? Like some schools have actually not missed a day of school in the sense because they have the computers and online Wi-Fi ready to go in their neighborhoods and areas. And so therefore their children are able to access the online resources. And so when they come into school next year, it's not like they missed a beat. They were on point all around. Whereas when the other areas that we are all aware of, our lower income communities, they're not having the same advantages. So the question is, what is the plan for those who are basically the have-nots compared to those who are the haves? That's a huge concern that we should be addressing. And then most critically, as we know, the federal government has issued out stimulus checks to our public, as well as a lot of funding has went out to corporate businesses and has went out to our local and state governments to help address these continued issues of affordability and poverty, housing, utilities, homelessness, transportation, job resources, availability, accessibility to job resources, as well as the needs of like food stamps and other mercy assistance programs to help sufficiently float people until we get our economic side of the fence back up and stabilized. One of the things that I'd like to see established that has been in some discussion, I think is a platform that Matt is going to present soon in his Black agenda, is the Black Bank. I would love to see us establish a Black bank in the state of Tennessee and allow opportunity of such economics to grow and develop. I think a Black bank could be very successful in Tennessee. I think it's something that would be role model even for other states to follow behind as a state legislative move, because I feel like if you have a Black bank, obviously off the bat, Black people are going to invest in it, but there are also people of color that invest in that. Women, I think, will definitely heavily invest in that, as well as progressive white people. I do believe they would invest in as well. And you can start develop a market where maybe instead of losing and having real estate crash, we might be able to develop and reboost it, because people are going to want to do what? Own homes. Because living in this pandemic, one thing you might have learned, renting might not be the move, because the people who are going to have the lowest facing of homelessness are those who own their homes. So renters, you have to be on your P's and Q's, especially if you haven't been paying your rent, because the reality of eviction and displacement is very realistic. And then, of course, all of this still comes back to the responsibility of voters. At the end of the day, voters, you have to continue to be vigilant in the participation of elections 2020. Major shout out to the state of Wisconsin. You guys really did that on ground zero out there. It's a prime example of what happens when you have inappropriate leaders in power, and how they use voter suppression even in a time of pandemic. I would like to encourage the state of Tennessee, let's continue to follow the trend of Wisconsin and not allow this pandemic nor our leaders use some type of form of voter suppression to intimidate us or to deter us from the voting booths. Again, by all means, if you're immunocompromised or disabled, the goal was to get you guys signed up for absentee ballots in the first place. We had already considered that. At this time, I would heavily influence, if you have not already requested or signed up for an absentee ballot, absolutely go ahead and do that right now. We don't need no glitches for your paperwork when it gets closer to time. If state Tennessee ends up being like Wisconsin, where we are voted upon and forced to go actually out to the polls, I will really hope ensure that people get to that poll, because the reason why you're out there voting in it is because you have the wrong leadership in the place in the first place. If you're that scared of that, petrified, then get your absentee ballot. Again, everyone has the option to that, and I suggest that for those of y'all who are concerned or worried, and that means get that absentee ballot. Let your voice be heard. Continue to push your initiative, continue to stand for your agendas. And then the last part is, of course, find out who's running for office. As I have already expressed before, we have a United States Senator in Marquita Bradshaw out of Memphis, Tennessee. We need to get behind her progressive movement, especially the progressive candidate. I mean, especially the progressive people, the candidates in our movements, progressive people. We need to get Marquita Bradshaw in office for you as senator. And then for Knoxville area, you know, we have several of our seats up for grabs on the state, the county, and the city council side of the fence, as well as several of our judicial seats are coming up. Our DAC, our sheriff's seat, all of these seats will be up for election for us. So we really need to be on our P's and Q's and really find out who our candidates are, figuring out those that are progressive for the people cause, and making sure that their agendas and platform line up for what the people really need when we get them in office. Again, Knoxville, pay attention to the leadership right now. Like I said, I think the Republican Party has completely lost its mind. And I think we have an excellent example of what happens when you allow one party to gain so much dominance, power, and control that they even start to move in a position of autonomic command and feel like there's no one they have to answer to. And overall, the things that Trump has done, he's been successful at doing it because the political party has been his number one compliance. They are just as criminally charged as he is at this time because he can't do it without the assistance of the fellow governmental branches supporting him. And that includes the judiciary bench. The Supreme Court has definitely done things I think that can bring them under war crimes for supporting some of his initiatives. Right now, some of the stimulus checks are delayed because he wants his personal signature on the check. America, we have a serious problem. And if people think that a man that this narcissistic and egotistic belongs in office and in leadership, and he's able to infiltrate that leadership down to his political party, where even we saw here in Tennessee with Governor Lee and how he's been handling our own pandemic. I think that we have to seriously question the moral character as we are as people at this point. So that's kind of my spiel for today. I am very upset, not happy with a lot of things. And I'm not necessarily worried about the post coronavirus pandemic, because I think the answer has been clear even as we stand in the pandemic. That again is coming to the people. The people are going to have to do their part. The people are going to take care of each other. And the reality is that we are going to have to seriously think about and consider the possibility of overthrowing our government, because as far as I'm concerned, they won't do the right thing unless we force them to do the right thing. That's all I got, Matt. Peace.
Awesome. Thanks, Constance. Put it back over here. So, you know, Constance brought up several points. There are so many things that we already knew about for sure, but were really exacerbated by this pandemic. One that Constance mentioned was that especially here in Knox County, and all across Tennessee, in our rural areas and other places, and in our urban centers, we have students that cannot either A, afford internet, or B, don't have access to it. So there are homes here inside the city of Knoxville, inside every major city in the state, that do not have access to the internet because there's build out that's required. And that is because we are not seeing the internet as a utility. So Chattanooga, the Electric Power Board in Chattanooga, EPB, a couple of years ago, saw the internet as a utility. And there's been a big push from the right to roll all that back and stop municipalities from delivering the internet as a utility to residents. So we need to walk down that path. If you went out and tried to apply for unemployment over the last couple of weeks, you will have been met with technology that is outdated, that doesn't work for the people. Several days this past week, the unemployment site jobsfortn.com went down just because they said we can't accept any more applications. Our computer systems are overwhelmed. The reason that has been happening is because there have been years of kickback technology contracts that have been given to people because they had friends in the legislature, friends in the executive branch. We need to stop that. We haven't, to my knowledge, had anyone with any real technical expertise to look at that and really call it for what it is. And it's bribed contracts that are given to these big companies, and they're not delivering technology that works for people. That's why organizations like Code for America are so important, because we need to make technology, especially government technology, radically easy for people to use, radically easy for people to process or be able to fill out and access. I'm talking that you should be able to fill out unemployment and apply for that over text message. You shouldn't need internet for it. We need to make these things radically easy to use. The other thing that we've seen is that these payroll protection programs and other programs given out for small business have already run out of money. One of the big problems there is that it's kind of surprising what the SBA, the Small Business Administration's definition of a small business is. It varies based on your industry, and sometimes it's calculated by your gross annual revenue, and sometimes it's calculated by how many employees you have. I asked a question earlier on Facebook, what does a small business mean to you? People replied back less than 25 employees, less than 50 employees, different things, but that was the general consensus. People are thinking of this, mom and pop store, businesses that are working in the community. That's what people normally think of as small business, but that is far and away from what the actual definition from the Small Business Administration is. For example, if you run a gold mine, you can be considered a small business with 1,500 employees. I don't know about you, but 1,500 employees is not a small business. If you are revenuing $40 million a year, you are not a small business, but to the Small Business Administration, you are. So that's why we ran out of money so quickly, because again, those gold mines that had 1,500 employees were able to apply for and get loans from the Payroll Protection Program. So we need a new definition. We need, I don't really know what we'll call it, but we might call it micro businesses or community businesses or something, to where we're not talking about large enterprise and sneaking them into bills that are supposed to be targeted for small businesses. And Constance always also mentioned the absentee ballot. Right now in Tennessee, you can get a mail-in ballot, but you have to have an excuse. So your excuse can be that you are over 60, that you're going to be out of town, that you, there are a variety of excuses on there. But for the everyday person that's going to be in town and they're under 60, in Tennessee, you are not eligible to get a mail-in ballot. And we need to change that. We need people to be able to vote safely. And that's why Indivisible is running the TN Vote Safe. I believe it's tnvotesafe.org. So we need to expand our absentee ballot so that everyone can vote by mail. And the first day, by the way, if you are eligible for one of those, so again, if you're 60 or over, you are eligible for a mail-in ballot. You can start requesting those on May the 8th in Tennessee. And that's for the August 6th election, and early voting for August 6th begins in July, on July 17th. So speaking of the August election, as you all know, we're on the ballot for District 15, as well as a bunch of other offices, but for sure show up or request a mail-in ballot for the August 6th election. But we've also got Anya Parker here with us out of District 90 in Memphis, and she's running for election over there. We've talked so much about how we're trying to build a progressive coalition across this state. It's no longer enough to be a Democrat. You have to be a Democrat and be willing to cause structural change and be willing to make progress. So Anya, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to kind of turn it over to you and just introduce yourself and tell us about your vision for Tennessee.
All right. Judging by the conversation, I'm in the right place. Constance, you hit on a lot of really good things, and I'm excited to talk to you. I'm Anya Parker. I'm running for state representative for District 90. And I've been in the community my entire life, 35 years. And I love Memphis. I also love the state of Tennessee. I'm thankful for Nathan for inviting me on this call, and just excited about the possibilities that we could see within this next state-led, because we have a lot of progressive people that are leaning towards that direction. And so for me as a candidate, it definitely feels like a movement. And I've met a lot of interesting people along the way that have empowered me to not only run this race, but to win this race. So I'm excited. I have nothing but positivity to give to you all today. I'm all about looking into the future. You know, the thing about the future is you have to create a plan. And if we don't have a plan set and all we're doing is just complaining about the situation, then we're just going in a roller coaster and we're constantly going around. And so that's what I bring to this conversation, is thoughtfulness of where our future can be, especially for the children that are coming up in this Donald Trump era. So that's what I have. I'm open to any questions that you guys have for me. I'm very big about integrity and just keeping it real. That's what we need. We need someone who's willing to not only speak to the issues, but keep transparency and let us know what's going on.
Awesome. Well, if I can ask you a question,
Please.
a lot of the people that may be watching right now are obviously probably from over here in East Tennessee and Knoxville. So tell us about what's going on in Memphis. So we've, I think it was week before last, we had Marquita over here with us. So yeah, tell us about, you know, we have, for instance, we have a, here in Knoxville, we have the highest Black poverty rate in the state at 42%. We have some real disparities here. And I know there's some things going on over there in Memphis. So what things do you see that we could implement at the state level? Say you and I both get there, what would you want to work on that we could do something to really affect our communities?
Absolutely. So Memphis is about 650,000 people. Out of that number, you have about 414,000 that are African American, right? So that's what, I'm not a numbers person, so probably about 60% of your population is African American. But when you talk about economic disparities and equitable education, African American people are not receiving access to equitable education. And that's a big problem. And that's something that I see that we can change in the General Assembly. You know, with this COVID-19 crisis, what I am seeing is nobody knows anything. That's the general point of contact that I'm getting from our state representatives as well as our governor. It's almost as if they're planning as they go, which is a huge problem. Although we were not expecting COVID-19, but we knew there could be a problem that could be detrimental to our communities. Why weren't we planning ahead? And so I have an issue with that. I also have an issue with the fact that during this COVID-19 process, our governor pushed the ESA vouchers through. You know, why is that our top priority and not giving the kids the curriculum for the week throughout the school year? You know, it's almost like it's too much pressure on the parents. For one, I am a parent as well. I have 3 children, one that is graduating from high school this year. I have one who is in the 7th grade, and I have one that's in the 3rd grade. And so all the responsibility has become to the parents. The teachers have not been interactive with the children. That is a problem as well. And so prior to COVID-19, the educational system was already being dismantled. You know, ASD needs to be abolished. You know, we've had a lot of problems prior to COVID-19. And what I would like to bring to the table is how can we streamline resources to our children? Joining with nonprofits and other organizations that can create a better education for our children. Like, that is the most important thing to me. And I know that that's what I can bring to the state led.
Absolutely. And we need more money for our schools, right? I think the last number I saw was we need $1.5 billion to get out of the bottom 10. That's a ridiculous amount. Like there has been a kind of this culture built up in state government that says we are not going to fight for the children. We're going to sit up here. We're going to fight for, I think one of the most ridiculous things I saw in the budget was something like $1 million for deer testing.
Yeah.
I've never actually gone back and looked to see what that was, but I mean, there are bills that out there to enable all sorts of things, but the healthcare of our people, the education of our children are just left behind, and our teachers as well, right? Like, if you account for inflation since 2009, our teachers across the state, average teacher salary has decreased by 4.4%. And I think where that has happened the worst, right? Their salaries have gone down, accounting for inflation much more drastically in our communities of color. So I think that it's important that we give money and support and create this culture of education. Yeah, Constance is raising her hand. Go ahead.
I got a question. I guess my question for both of you all, because this is like, yeah, we're on this to do this, right? For both of you all. I guess the question is that you just said that we needed 1.5 billion to recover our school system statewide. I guess the question I get to is, well, what about the Poor People Fund that we do have $1 billion sitting in? Are you two open to finding a way to write legislation to start dumping some of that money out? Because for whatever reason, Governor Lee and several of our state representatives right now are all fully aware of that funding, yet no one is saying anything about that money. Like, when are we going to start pulling funds out of our poor people pot, literally?
Right. I think that we don't have a money problem. I don't think that is our biggest issue. It's where is the funding being allocated to? That is the real issue. I know here in Memphis, we have tons of nonprofits that we can join forces with, but that has not happened. And so once again, how do we streamline those resources back to the community? And I think that that's what we really need to start working on. How can we educate folks and not necessarily just keep throwing money at a situation?
Yeah, and I think Gloria Johnson put it well. She tweeted like a few weeks ago when the budget put 300 million or something into the rainy day fund. She just basically replied and was like, "It's raining. Like,
it's raining.
this is what we need it for, And I mean, I look at everything. I look at what's going on in our economy, and the people that are being hit by this are not the hedge fund managers and people like that. Like, they change their stuff around, and it's not that bad on Wall Street. Like, don't get me wrong, it's bad, but it is that bad over here on Main Street. It is that bad when you drive down Magnolia. It is that. People, we had 6 million people file for unemployment yesterday, I think.
Right.
Like, it is that bad. It's happening to the working class. It's happening to the people that the economy is built on, right?
But Matthew, you made a good point when you talked about, let's define what small business is. What is that? Let's define it. I'm a small business owner. Okay. Mm-hmm. And folks look at me as being the small business, but they don't know, what is it? Is it 1,500 employees that you can have? I think you said that already.
Yeah, so, it depends on your business, but yeah, you don't have 1,500 employees, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So should you be lumped into when Congress is talking about, giving a bailout for your small business? You shouldn't be lumped in there with a gold miner that has 1,500 employees.
Absolutely not.
The solution for you is not the same, and money for you should not be coming from the same pot. We can. I don't really know much. I kind of know a little bit about your business, but for what it costs to bail out that gold mine, we can support hundreds, if not thousands, of actual small businesses. And
Absolutely.
I'm a person that believes that words have power. When you define something, when you give a name to something, you have some power over that or power to help that. So we need a term that is, I guess, mom and pop kind of gets it done, but that we don't have traditional relationships anymore. A lot of women are single and running small businesses, and I just don't feel like mom and pop gets it done anymore. Right. So I think we need a new term to talk about our community businesses. Go ahead, Constance.
All right. So
Matthew.
next question, because we were talking about post-corona. I guess my question would be for both of you all again, because y'all are the ones pursuing the state legislator's seat, would be if you were in legislation right now and you had access to the Poor People Fund today, I guess my question for each one of you is what is one area that tomorrow you would dump money to as soon as we're talking about? Like, I know for a fact this is going to impact the turnover coronavirus, and I know for a fact this money is going here right now today. So for each one of you, I guess my question is if you had access to the fund today, where would you put it at right now as your way to support post-corona recovery?
I'll let you go first.
I would have to say into virtual education. Okay, my screen just went out. Yeah, I would have to say into virtual education because right now everything is all over the place, and like I said, there seems like to be a lot of lack of planning. And you actually have children that are sitting at home every single day that are not being educated. And so the kids were sent out March the 12th, right? So you got March, you got April and May. Now you have the summer. You have to add that in as well. June, July, August. That's 6 months of no education. I can tell you what that's probably going to look like next year. It's going to be really bad because every child does not have access. And that's a big problem. So that would be one thing that I would want to put the money towards first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I think that we've talked a lot about starting a black bank. I think the most important thing, and we'll be releasing this policy for I don't know how much to tell right now, but anyways, we're gonna look at a few public banks that are kind of consolidated together. If you want to do some reading about it, we're modeling that a lot off of the Bank of North Dakota. So in that, we're gonna create a bank that we're gonna fund it at the consolidated level, but then earmark money for each one of those banks. So a black bank to take over when we ban payday loans. And stop that predatory lending, a black bank that will be there, that you don't have to worry about getting redlined if you need to go take out a mortgage. How much displacement has been caused because somebody was redlined out of their own community? Anyway, so fund this consolidated bank, consortium of banks, one being a black bank, one being, and when I say that, I mean black-led bank, right? Like Constance said, white people can still invest, people of color can still invest in a black bank, but a black-led bank. One bank that's a green bank, so one that is out there for us to attract businesses that are building green technology and deploying it in Tennessee. So I talked a lot about the Tennessee Green New Deal and we need to be able to fund that, and we need to be able to make those investments and also give people loans to go out there and build green infrastructure. We talk a lot about how housing is a human right. And when we talk about that, safe and sustainable housing is a human right. That means housing that your electric bill doesn't cost you $700 a month because, the slumlord that owns the place refuses to replace the seals around the doors and put double pane windows in. That's what we mean by sustainable. And those are the things that are going to be driven by the Green Bank. So kind of that consortium of public banks that drive our whole economy forward, that's where I'd look at making an investment. Sweet. You have another question, Constance?
I guess the overall in general concept is that what is obviously very prevalent between you and Mrs. Parker and Park. That's hilarious, Parker and Park. But I guess it is encouraging for voters right now. I'm hoping that voters are watching this engagement happen and showing a prime example of how, even though we have Memphis and Knoxville sitting here on this chat call, we have leadership that have the very same mindset and same vision, which is what I've been trying to enforce and impose: people candidate voting. Here's an excellent example of people candidates. I wish we did have Mrs. Bradshaw on her too, so we can see her tie in that how, as she is from this state, going to our federal position, but how she can keep that connection with our state leadership. And it would be really dope to even possibly bring in people like Dacian Lundy and some of our locals to show how this chain of command is really flowing, how the people interests are being protected, and how basically by you all winning office, we're starting to build the platform of more of a people party altogether. And so I hope that those who are watching can kind of see the concept taking place here, because we all wholeheartedly support education. We all wholeheartedly support some type of Black economical plan. We all wholeheartedly support some type of plan for housing and affordability of our utilities. We all wholeheartedly support some type of plan for our homeless. All of our areas have some type of serious homeless problem. And one of the things I have constantly advocated, even before, after, and when this is all said and done, during, and in between, is that coronavirus did not create these problems. They already existed. Coronavirus exploited and said, hey, you have this problem, you ain't been taking care of it. Now watch how I'm going to blow it off the map for you now, because we have a big problem where everybody got to get out the way when I come through the door. So I just want people to see that. And I want people to identify how current leadership in office is handling this problem that we've been had, and how this has came in and farther pushed the bigger agenda of we have homeless issues and education issues and other things, versus candidates who are running for office who are already building plans because they were aware of these problems, but how now coronavirus has shown how poorly those in charge are taking the command on this, and why it's important to give someone else a shot. Why not? At this point, what is the worst that could happen? My goodness. Leadership said it's okay that we die to a certain extent. So we got somebody saying, well, I don't think that's okay that we do die. Why not vote for the person who says we don't think we should be dying right now? So I'm just hoping that people are paying attention and really grasping what we are talking about, what these rallies have really become, and people tune in to learn who we are voting for. You all are the people candidates, and I thank you both for taking this great position on at a very trying, challenging time to be a campaign candidate, especially against some of y'all that are going against stronghold candidates who've had these seats for forever. So I do, like I said, I appreciate it, and I'm going to do everything in my power as a representative of Black Coffee to make sure the endorsements come out and we show that we are standing solidarity with you guys, and we are pushing for you getting office. Because you better believe you win, I'll be blowing your phone up.
If we win.
Let me take that. Let me speak some things into the universe. We will win. And when I win, Constance Evans gonna be calling my people, pulling up in the whole nine. But I know that we'll all be in good faith. And I know that in Memphis, in Knoxville, and Chattanooga, we will be winning out here. So organizations and others, pay attention. We are building a
absolutely. And Constance, I'm so grateful just to have this opportunity just to speak to you all. And so what I would say to voters is go after the person that speaks to the issues that you care about. It's not about having a pretty sign and, all these endorsements and things like that, all this political hype that we get into. But I would also tell voters to look at the policies. Call these folks. If you have a concern and you can't get access to me right now, and I'm not an elected official, that's an issue, because once they get in the seat, guess what? They're not going to answer your calls. Whether you vote for me or Matthew, somebody's going to be in the seat. You guys know me. You've seen me over the years. You've seen me in the community. I'm an advocate for issues all across the state. So folks, they know me. I'm not just someone that fell out the sky yesterday and decided they want to run for office. Stay positive. And also know we cannot put all the responsibility on the government. I know someone's going to get mad about that, but at the end of the day, we have leaders in our community. We have pastors, we have nonprofit organizations, and we know when we pull together, we can get change done. Stop waiting on the government. We can do it ourselves. And so that's what I would say to voters.
Absolutely. And listen, that's awesome. And that, I mean, that's what's happening in Knoxville right now. You look around, Constance's other job, is running Sleeves for Needs.
Hold on, get it right. The other organization, Sleeves for Needs, 501c3 social service, has been a force to be reckoned with. It's been an honor to have Matt sign on. I be telling people the same thing, like, don't you want a political person that will come out here and feed you, whether you are homeless or living in your house? Like, so shout out to Matthew for doing his part too. And he's not been doing his Matthew part for office. He's been doing his Matthew part a human being. So you can put shout out for having a moral standpoint for how he's been doing it. So but I'm gonna let you finish your spiel, but I had to stop your Sleeves for Needs. Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah. And by the way, go support Sleeves for Needs or First Aid Collective Knox. If you're not in Knoxville, go find, there's somebody in your community that is out there feeding people, putting Band-Aids on people, exchanging needles for people. There's somebody out there doing the groundwork, and they don't have lobbyists. They are not, there are a lot of 501c3 nonprofits that are big, that have lobbyists, that require people to sign crazy non-disclosures and statements of whatever to be able to volunteer with them. Those are not the people that we've seen out on the streets. Those are not the people that we've run into. Those are not the people that are on Broadway feeding the homeless. Those are not the organizations that you're going to find mowing people's yards. They're not the organizations, right? There are community-led organizations led by our community leaders that are out there doing stuff on the ground, making sure that those needs are being met, and making sure they're being met without a lot of paperwork, right? These are low barrier. These smaller nonprofits that are getting the work done are low barrier, and there's not an application process. There's not a runaround. There's not an automated attendant when you call. So those are the ones
that the paperwork is such an insult to people. It's like, people are already struggling. People are already going through shit and turmoil. And if you are a parent with children, you are probably even more damaged in the emotional and mental state.
You don't need to prove that you're poor with paper.
Right, exactly. So I just wanted to be an insult to make you fill out a 50-page form, like Matt said, asking for all the details of your life from the day you was born to how you got here, as the most insulting and degrading thing ever. When I could just say, you know what? I see you need a helping hand. Let me provide you a hand up today. And maybe tomorrow you win again because of this one hand up today. You never know. I mean, I have so many stories from behind Sleeves for Needs and the work we've been doing. Some of those success stories of work, I said that one time changed somebody's life. And it was like, wow, all I did was just give the guy a lunch that day. And it was like all he needed to revamp himself back to life, and so that's why I said, yes, legislation of our leadership is important, because these people that are homeless and other difficult binds are not nobodies. They are somebody's child, somebody's mother, somebody's something. And the last line of defense against things like suicide and other types of things that people get when they fall in their deepest hole is the hope that we can provide as that face from a nonprofit that they don't know at all, and that we just say, hey, we care because we know you out here. And that's the bare minimum we can do. And that's why I want to take the time to shout out Next Step Initiative, Addie Parr, who's been on ground zero herself out there. And our community insulted her. Our local government, as I said, gave $700,000 to our Knoxville Zoo, even though she's been on ground zero since day one coronavirus, and they only gave her $1,000 to support her effort. That's a slap in the face. But the good thing is she don't do it for that. So that's the thing that really powers the whole movement, is how we can go without that. We know that even if you don't give it, we'll still get it, we'll still provide it, because the people in need is greater than the economics and money at this time. So that's why I said that, like Matthew said, and you said, and many of us on here have already said, support your grassroots. They are the ones doing the work. It's not the big brand organizations. It's the ground zeros. We just know you're out here struggling, trying to help you survive as we survive ourselves, organizations that's doing the work. That's all I got. I'm gonna shut up now. I'm gonna get quiet.
And to be honest, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And to be honest, that is something I would love to see more at the Capitol. Let's work with the nonprofits. Let's work with the grassroots. Let's work with the churches and stop listening to these lobbyist companies, because they are out of touch with what's going on in the communities. And it's very detrimental. And especially in Tennessee, when we have lobbyist companies like the Beacon Center that are heavily funded by the GOP. I have a problem with that. And we have to make that change very soon.
We do. And you're going to hear, so that's another thing. I encourage you all to go, our fundraising reports are all public records. You can go and look and see who's giving us money. You can look and see what we're spending our money on. I encourage you to go to the Tennessee Registry of Election Finance, go Google that, and type our names in. Read, it's real simple. If you type in Park, you're going to get Anya Parker's and Matthew Park's both. So you only have to do one search. So go there, look at it, and say, when you see things like Sevier County Good Government Fund, doesn't that just sound like a group of Republicans? When you see things like the, you're going to see a bunch of things on there. And you can trace them directly back to things that impact your life. When you wonder why you can't order cases of wine to your house, go look and see who the wine distributors lobby, WSWT, is giving their money to. And there's a little hint, it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats too. So when you're voting in primaries, you need to look at that, because you need to be sending people who are going to stand up for people, not just are going to stand up for these lobbying organizations.
Absolutely.
And coming out of this, you're going to hear the term fiscal responsibility a lot, as if we weren't already hearing it from the Capitol a lot. What I want you to do when you hear the words fiscal responsibility, I want you to replace it with the words public negligence. And I want you to hear that whoever's saying fiscal responsibility does not care about you. They do not care about you. Because like Anya said, the money is there, it's being misappropriated, it's being used to fund the things that these large lobbying groups want funded.
And legislator pet projects.
And legislator pet projects, yeah. Yeah. So go look at those financial reports. If you have a question, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to tell you who these people are. We'd be happy to point to you bills that they have essentially paid for. So please reach out if you have a question. That's what we're here for. We're here to also help people learn about the government and what their government is doing. It's not just about getting things done and helping you out with things. We want to be good representatives of the people, but we also want you to understand what your government is doing, because you can't fight back against what your government's doing if it's all being done in the shadows and it's not out there publicly enough. I know Constance agrees with me on that. Nathan, did you want to add anything to this from an indivisible perspective?
Yeah, to that specific topic. No, I was going to add something about self-employment. That's the big thing we've been focusing on, self-employment and unemployment insurance. But to fiscal responsibility, that's something as a grassroots organization, that's what we spend all of our time fighting. You know, we don't have lobbyists in Nashville, so we're the boots on the ground, and that's something that tends to bug us in all of the work that we do. Is we're up against people who lobbyists themselves who are making more money than our organizations have as an operating annual budget split amongst countless number of people. And I'm sure Constance has the same thing. I know Sleeves for Needs doesn't have any of the budget that any of these lobbyists have. And that's, you know, and that's one of the reasons, like you were mentioning earlier, this is exactly why the SBA funds have been drained dry already. When you have, why doesn't my small business, why doesn't Anya's small business in Memphis have money available? It's simply because there are people out here like Ruth's Chris, a steakhouse chain that was eligible for SBA funds because each individual location has under the 500 employee limit. Or Ritz-Carlton, a hotel chain, has this money available. You know why, Anya? Do you know why your salon and my transportation company don't have any money? Because we can't afford lobbyists in Washington, D.C., or to sit on Capitol Hill in Nashville to influence legislators and write them checks. That's the reason all of us sitting at home and And more so, it's why people who don't look anything like me, why Black and brown people, and especially Black and brown women, have even less access to capital in times of hardship, is because I don't have access to lobbyists, but sure as hell, most Black people and brown people don't have access to lobbyists at the dial of a phone. And that's a problem. And that's what thrills me so much about supporting and standing behind folks like Matt and like you, Anya, as you are out living life and you know what you're in the community and you actually know what it's like. And, you know, you mentioned something, Anya, and it's spot on, or maybe it was Matt, or I think we've all touched around it. The big thing that we have that the corporatist candidates who are running don't have is the fact that we're grassroots. And the beautiful thing about these corporatist lobbyists is they cannot even wrap their mind around what grassroots is. Like literally, they can't. It does not compute. Like they don't understand how people will be interested in fighting for something without getting a paycheck cut to them. And that's why the work that you're doing is so incredibly important. Can I pivot from here to the self-employed people stuff, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to. I was on a roll, and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't want to. I needed. Thank you for the permission, although I probably really didn't need it.
No,
because I'm
there's
gonna
no
do it
permission
anyway.
to be granted or taken or given here. You know, we're all just here fighting for a bunch of stuff. So fight for whatever you want to
I
fight
know.
for.
Well, I was like, I
Everybody
didn't want to make too hard of a turn without making it known I was about to make a turn. So, you know, to some of the points when we were talking about all this is, y'all, you know, 80% of the businesses in the United States are small businesses. And that's something that is irritating in this change in economy. You know, when the GOP, when we have a governor who runs on being a businessman, when we have a president who runs on being a businessman, no matter how filled it is, they have this focus on being business folks, like business folks. So they should understand the struggles Anya and I have as small business owners. However, they don't. And there aren't that many small business owners in the Tennessee General Assembly, are there? I mean, although I suppose you can count some, you know, attorneys and some of the doctors there if they have private practices as technically small businesses, but their revenues are different. My point in this is the GOP focuses on business, but we all know what that actually means. That's code for corporations. And it's code for big corporations. And it comes back to the thing we were just talking about. It's code for people who can afford lobbyists. But we're not that. And when we have times like this, COVID really shot holes through the fabric of what we do to take care of employees and low wage earners in the state of Tennessee. When you look at it, and you know, Anya said nobody knows anything. They don't. The Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, they don't know anything. You were spot on. They know nothing. And you call your state representatives, and they're trying to get answers, and they know nothing too. So when do we stop passing the buck around to folks? You know, when do we? Because I did an interview with Indivisible earlier today with a small business owner, and because so many employees, well, here's actually, let me backtrack just a touch. The Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the Office of Unemployment Insurance, had 20 people working in it 6 weeks ago. They added, I think it was approximately 80 people and bumped it up to about 100. They hired on, I think it was 100 people last week, and they've hired another 150 that are coming in next week. So the department is going to have, if I did my math right, about 350 people working in an office that had 20. So let alone are they trying to deal with this exponential growth in Tennessee unemployment insurance claims, they also have an office that they're trying to onboard, 330 new people. So some of the things I wanted to share in the time that I have taken over right now is that, y'all, I know there are a bunch of you out there who are applying for unemployment insurance, and I want to tell you that I'm certain, I would like to say I understand everybody's struggle, but I don't. I know I'm in a much more privileged situation, and I know there are people out there who, in this economy, could not make it 1 week without a regular paycheck, let alone the 6 weeks we've been going. And like, uh, I, I, I feel for you as best I can, and it has to be incredibly difficult. And as has been mentioned, there are community groups out there, and there are a lot of politicians. If you are having unmet needs, reach out to someone who's running for office. It's a big part of what they're doing. And there are also nonprofit groups who can help you get through this. That's literally their job.
Wow.
And so with that in mind, like, hang in there. It's going to be tough. And especially my self-employed folks, it's going to be even tougher because there was a webinar yesterday and there were some hard questions asked of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And they simply don't know how to work with and around self-employed individuals. The antiquated website that's written in, was it COBOL or Cobalt? The 50-year-old programming language, they're going to have to bring people out of the dead to come and fix their system. All this to say is they don't know how to work with us on the most basic level. And for Tennessee being run by a trifecta of the GOP who says that they're all about business, the sad problem is these people don't understand a gig economy. And they don't understand that the majority of workers in Tennessee now work multiple jobs or are there 1099 workers. We're not in an age of you have your W-2 and you go pick a job when you're 18 and you work it for 50 years and you clock out and then you go sit in your recliner and die. We're all working tons of hustles these days and they're all 1099s. So this comes back to like some of the things I want to leave you with is if you're unemployed and you're struggling, go apply for the unemployment insurance. You go to the site is jobs4tn.gov. When you go in, you file a new claim. If you are a self-employed person, when you file it, do not be alarmed. I cannot stress this enough. Do not be alarmed. You will, I would say 99.9%. The first email you get back into the first thing you're going to see after you fill it all out is going to tell you that you're monetarily ineligible. Don't panic. The system doesn't have to deal with you. And that is the response you'll get as a self-employed person. So when you're answering the questionnaire, there are a couple of things I don't want you to get tricked up on. It is going to ask you if you are laid off because of COVID-19. Click that. It's going to ask you another question, and it seemed tricky. It's going to say, did you lose work because of a pandemic or a disaster? Or I think it actually said a global disaster or something. Do not click that one because the only two recognized disasters are the tornadoes that were in Nashville and the tornadoes that were in Chattanooga. That doesn't count for this particular thing, and that's okay. Just click that and move on. You are not affected by that. So you will go on, make sure it's sometime just after that you click you are self-employed. It will ask you a few additional questions. Answer them. I fully understand as a self-employed person that despite when you are not working, as we haven't been able to work, you're always working, but it's fine. They'll massage the language, but you are not working. And they also didn't have a good answer. The state doesn't, where some of us, and Anya, you may not because of the service, the way you do it, but I have outstanding invoices. So I'm like, well, someone could finally pay a 6-week-old invoice tomorrow. Well, I didn't earn that money tomorrow.
Right.
I earned 6 weeks ago. So, but they were asked, well, how does that happen? If we have money come through, and they were like, well, they didn't know how to answer it. And
Right.
of course, and I'm trying to be nice about it. I get it. They just didn't prepare. it's something you mentioned, Matt. It's people spending money on programs and services and things that have no understanding of where society currently is. Like no one who has any understanding of tech has stood anywhere near
Right.
getting sworn into an office. So,
and Nathan, can I add to that? Why isn't the unemployment for small businesses separate? It should be separate. It shouldn't come through the same process. Like to me, that would be like the most easiest fix. Just start a whole new separate application, just specifically targeting the small businesses.
Let me tell you why. So it goes back to just there's literally no one in this process. There is somebody, but they're in a basement somewhere probably. But there's no one in this process that can say, hey, you've built this piece of junk on a COBOL mainframe and you haven't upgraded it to an agile DevOps, cloud-based system. These agile DevOps and cloud are not terms that you hear talked about in politics, and that's a problem because we are in a technology-based society right now. When a government system goes down or is inadequate, which we've seen all over the place, it affects real people, and it can even get people harmed and killed. It can make it to where people are not able to eat or get health care. So don't you think we should spend a little more time on the technology and actually ask these questions? So that's one, like, I don't get to talk about that a lot. My background is in tech. My job title is cloud architect. So I don't get to talk about it because it doesn't fit as a piece well in politics, but it's such an important underlying thing. And also people look at me and go, what is a cloud architect, right? But it's so important. And that's one of the, I would call it like ancillary maybe, but it's one of the things that I intend to do when I get to the legislature is say, hey, we need to look at our technology procurement. We need to ask questions about why this tech broke down. We definitely need to get rid of this COBOL mainframe that's running the unemployment thing and make it to where when something happens like this, it's easy to stand up. If you look at New York, so my partner is a flight attendant for American Airlines, which meant because he's paid through the Railroad Workers Act, his unemployment is actually processed through New York because that's where his American Airlines base is technically. So because all that happened, I got to see also what the New York unemployment process looked like. It was awesome. He got his unemployment before Tennessee had even figured out if they were going to pay any unemployment. So the New York process was awesome. And if you go and you look at their tech stack is a lot better. Their culture inside the technology departments is better. And they spend more money there. They talk more about it. And that's an important part of social justice and climate justice and making sure that we have a just transition to a new economy, to a green economy, to something past the COVID-19 pandemic. Is we got to make sure that government technology is working for people.
And do you want to know something that is circling back to mediocre Governor Lee? So do you want to know something that's interesting is that we're all fully aware of, I believe it was the CARES Act included the $600 addition to Tennessee's unemployment. There's a formula. It's like you take your annual salary and you multiply it by 0.8, and then you come up with a number, and then you divide that by 52, and that would be your max. But the maximum, however, that Tennessee pays is $275 a week. The average for Tennessee, because I'm a font of information, is $216. So if you qualify for the $275, then you would get the $600 in addition. Tennessee's unemployment is generally for, 26 weeks, but I think that's right. The CARES Act added an additional 13 weeks, so you're eligible for it for 39 weeks. And I might have missed a number up in there. and that additional 600 is good for 16 weeks. Now, here's the clincher. And I see a theme here as I'm about to go. So, much like Medicaid expansion, which requires the state to approve taking the money, which is readily available, and as I've complained many times, like with Medicaid expansion, we're pinching away over $3 million every single day by not taking that money. But back to unemployment. That extra $600 a week requires that Tennessee accept that money. So here's the real problem with it. Let's say you filed for unemployment on March 22nd. The federal says that the 600 per week addition will be retroactive, provided the money is still there if Tennessee decides to accept it.
Right.
It is good for 13 weeks. So if Tennessee doesn't get around to approving this or the money gets exhausted, then it wouldn't be available to Tennesseans. So I'm not kind of telling everyone they need to be calling Governor Lee's office. Calling Governor Lee's office, y'all. You need to push him to accept taking this money, because we hear it all out here and it sounds great, but the caveat behind this money is not available to Tennessee unless he chooses to take it. And we have seen lately that if enough phone calls come to his switchboard, he'll cave in on stuff. And which is a nice weakness to have learned. I wish we'd have learned this before now, but here we are. So I would recommend, if you're listening now, live or later, you got to call his office. Matt, if you would mind to throw Governor Lee's telephone number in.
Cell phone number? Is that what you said?
Oh, if I had his cell phone number, I would probably be on what is it? TBI's list.
Right.
I think it's worth pointing out that even the maximum is $275 a week for Tennessee unemployment.
We're one of the lower ones in the entire country.
That's not even the minimum wage. No. And it certainly is not the living wage. Living wage for a single person in Knoxville is $10.54 an hour. That's what for one single person. So that means if you get unemployment without the $600 from the CARES Act, you get just regular Tennessee unemployment, which, by the way, is an insurance paid for by your employer. You get regular Tennessee unemployment. That means that you are almost half. It's like $6.75 an hour or something. Your income has almost been cut in half by unemployment. So you're not going to be able to pay your bills for the next month.
Absolutely not.
No. And none of us are paying $250 in rent, or at least I'm not. I don't know if you all are. My rent's not that.
Not in 2020.
No, I think that there has been this idea that if we just make the social safety net weak enough, people will ensure that they have jobs and they'll take care of themselves because they'll know that there isn't anything there to help them. Well, they know there's nothing there to help them, but that doesn't wave some magical wand.
Will people remember this when they walk into the booth or fill out their form and put a stamp on it in August and in November? And it's something I've said before and you've said it. Folks have got to start repeating this mantra. The GOP does not care about you. If their business they're concerned with is business as usual, then that's a problem. And that is not the business I want to get back to as we move away from this pandemic and we start to restructure our society. If it's business as usual, then we've done it wrong.
Exactly.
This was something we should pay attention to. This is the structural change we have to focus on moving forward. And it takes people like you, Matt, and like you, Anya, to keep being, as Matt likes to say, those clarion voices to carry this message forward. It's like,
right.
There's nothing normal about this.
In any kind of way.
No. There's not. Thank you.
And there, by the way, if you're watching this and you don't live in Knoxville and you don't live in Memphis and can't vote for Anya, you can still do a few things. One, you can volunteer. All campaigning is virtual now, so you have no excuse not to volunteer for a multitude of progressive candidates. It doesn't matter where you are, you can still call and talk to people. People are sitting at home for the most part. They want to take your phone call, they want to take your text message. So reach out to a progressive campaign near you, or reach out to our campaign or Anya's campaign. We will take volunteers. We love volunteers. And also, if you have the means during this time, please donate. We still need money to run our campaigns. And by the way, we're not the only two progressive state house candidates. They are all across the state. We've been chatting. A few of us are chatting across the state, trying to figure out how to really develop that progressive coalition. There are state house candidates. We've got congressional candidates and state Senate candidates and Senate candidates. So all across the state, progressives are coming together, and we're saying, what are we going to do when we not only take the legislature and the governor's mansion from the GOP? What are we going to do when we take it for progressives? What are we going to do when we say it's not just enough to flip both houses and the governor's mansion? We're not just flipping it for Democrats. We're not just flipping it blue. We're flipping it progressive, because we're going to get some things done. And that's why we're building that progressive coalition. There are people all across the state that are running. If you live in an area and you're not sure who is progressive that you should support in your area, send us a message. We'll help you figure that out. We'll help connect you to progressive campaigns where you can volunteer and give of your resources to those campaigns. So please stay in touch with us. We need help all the time. We want to talk to you. We need ideas. If you're seeing something on the ground that we haven't published a policy about, we haven't made it one of our issues, but you think it's important, I've modified our platform multiple times because people have called and said, this thing is really important to me. And a lot of times I have a way that I feel about it. We just haven't put it on our website. We haven't talked about it. So if you want things to be talked about that you care about, call us, talk to us. We're definitely available for you. And I was over on, I keep an eye on Facebook and Twitter and everything. And I've also been helping people with what Nathan's described. It's part of what we do is we know a lot about government by being here and running for things and reading policy, reading bills. So if you need help navigating any government service right now, again, reach out to us and we can connect you with nonprofits, or we can help you file an appeal for your unemployment. We can figure this stuff out with you. There's a reason there's 99 seats in Tennessee. That's 99 chances for progressives to sit there and help out people, and we can divide the state up and take care of everyone. It is possible. We have the money. We just have to be willing to do it. We have to be willing to show up and vote, and vote for progressives. So make sure to know who you're voting for. There are a ton of resources for that. Read about people. Ask them questions, give them phone calls, send them text messages. Yeah.
Right. I guess I can add to that. And I've said this before, remember the folks that spoke to the issues that were related to what you have going on. Nathan said, don't trust the GOP. They do not care. That's very clear. And most of our state leg is comprised of the GOP. And so they're not concerned about the issues that regular folks are facing, and I don't think that it may not be just they don't care. I just think they just don't know. And so remember them. Don't forget that. For me, COVID-19 showed that there wasn't a clear plan in place. There wasn't a real emergency plan. And so for me and Matthew going in, creating that emergency plan, creating that policy, what does that look like for the constituents of the state of Tennessee? And I'm also paying attention to the elected officials that have been very quiet. You know, it's crickets. The world is burning and on fire, and we haven't heard a word from you. To me, that is concerning, and that does not look like leadership for the state of Tennessee. We have some folks that are playing politics as usual. You know, instead of talking about the real issue, we're gonna go around the issue and never answer the question. And so I would like to see more elected officials be transparent and really generally be for the people as they say they are. Mm-hmm. Matthew said good ways to support us as candidates is conversation. You know, having this virtual town hall was really great for me because I get to hear from you guys. I'm taking notes. Like, look, I got a page full of notes. And so listening is really big and very important when you are an elected official. And not just listening to the big wigs. You know, you got to listen to the regular folks. You know, it may be a homeless guy or a teacher, you know, be willing to be concerned about the issues that that person is facing. As a candidate, we need money. We can't be a viable candidate if we're not seen. The good thing, well, COVID-19 is not a good situation, but it's been a blessing in disguise because it has allowed us to amp up our efforts virtually. I mean, I've done so many Zoom calls that I literally had a nightmare about Zoom last night. So clearly I'm on the right track. And so ask those questions, like even with our current elected officials, if they are doing something that concerns you, pick up the phone, call them. They work for you. Don't forget that. We work for you. So whatever your issue is, they have to be accessible to you. And if they're not, vote them out in August. That's how you answer that. As I stated before, if folks are candidates and you can't get in contact with them now, when they get in the seat, you're not going to have access to them. It's not going to change. And I think that's all I have.
Awesome. You don't have to raise your hand here.
This is what's been going
That's
on during this whole thing. I've been listening to y'all, let y'all say your piece. But there is honestly a concern that I do want to bring forward for our grassroots ground zero workers, those types of people. If you all have not been aware of, I just shared the post, but KKK is actively going around Knoxville County, Knoxville, recruiting right now. I just shared a whole post where someone saw a whole set of flyers out saying the KKK is active recruiting, support the white cause. This is something I think I've said in numerous Zoom calls. So I want to bring that back. Again, remain vigilant, people. When things are suppressed and oppressed, and you start having frenzies over paper goods and other things, and people start to panic and reach a state of irrationality because their concern is, what about me? Not about you, what about me? Keep aware of the fact that crime and hate crime and other types of attacks are real, and they do start to happen. Part of my frustration I'm dealing with right now, and I'm getting it off of social media because it's just not worth the headache, because unfortunately sometimes people really don't get it because they are privileged, because of their ethnicity or their socioeconomical, even sometimes their educational background is a form of protection for them. There are people in certain of the or groups that have been created on Facebook as delivery and assistant mean groups that I've shared this flyer to. Some of the people in the groups have been arguing with me about the relevance of that to the particular group. But as I expressed, is that, you know, if you have people of color and Black people assisting in these groups, and you have KKK running around actively showing their presence and on the prowl right now, people need to know that, because that's a risk factor, right? There is a reality of that. Even as a Black person, we already know the storyline, right? You could be doing something amazing and great, but if you got somebody like a hate group like KKK who hates you for all the wrong reasons and not because of your character and morality of you as a person, that's a risk when you're out delivering groceries to the elderly or children in other locations. You know, we don't know where they're at, where they could pop up to. Yeah, we do know some of their heavily known locations, but at the same time, does that stop you from taking food to the elderly woman who hasn't ate in 2 weeks? So, you know, this is a reality, and I want people to remain vigilant. Understand that as we continue to feel the pressures of not having a paycheck, as Nathan has brought up, as you continue to feel the pressures of landlords trying to send fake eviction notices and other things to people, as you continue to feel the pressures of people not being able to provide the basic necessities necessities in their home, crime is automatically going to reflect to that, and people need to remain vigilant. I would like to see the latter. My goal is to try to make sure that SLEAS and these other grassroots organizations who are on the ground, we're promoting the message of take care of each other. Let's not pray and attack on each other. PREAY, pray. Let's not do that. Let's help and assist and take care of each other. If someone's without, I'd rather before you break into my home and try to take it from me, ask me for it. I might have enough to share it with you, or I might know a resource that we can get it both for both of our necessities. So people, remain vigilant. There are a lot of crazy things going on. People are feeling the stress. And when we all know that when you have lack of resources, limited healthcare access, and mental health accessibility, people start to flip their wigs, lose their cool. And we kind of catch the aftermath as that, because we're all becoming victims of the blow up. So just remain vigilant out there and understand that as much as good, as much fighting powers we're doing, yes, there are people always working against us and want to destroy us at every angle they can take. Remain vigilant, people. Please remain vigilant.
Can I speak to that, Constance? So early on, I was encouraged not to run. Part of that has to do with white supremacy, classism, racism, sexism, all these isms. I'm too black. I'm a woman. All of these things. And so my deciding factor was, I'm going to be courageous. I'm going to be vigilant, and I'm going to stick to the values that were put into me as a young child. My grandmother was the first elected, the first African-American elected official in Greenville, Mississippi. So I was raised around a woman who was powerful and fearless. And so that transferred over into me. And so I'm going to continue to fight for what I believe in. I believe that all children should have access to equitable education. We all should have access to a livable wage. We know $7.25 is not going to be enough. And we also deserve an opportunity to have an community free of crime. I'm rolling. Community free of crime. And so I know that I can bring that to the table. And so, but we also have to beware and be cautious, because my mentor, she told me one day, she said, baby, everybody ain't going to heaven. And so we know that. And so going forth, institutionalized racism is very much there. And it's the reason why our educational system is failing. It's the reason why we have so much crime. And it's the reason why we are facing economic disparities. And so community building is very big, even down to what we're doing right now. We're connecting policy as well as information to voters. And this is something that our election commission should be doing. But no, it takes grassroots folks like yourselves to come up with platforms like this so that we can speak to the issues. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We have to remain vigilant. I just want to bring that to people's attention. Remain vigilant during these trying times. That's all I got.
I just want to sign off with this. Don't forget, if you're watching this and you are a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're a member of any other community, don't forget that racism is the operating system by which all other discrimination occurs. The thing that I want to drive home is if you've been discriminated against for any reason, remember that longest term discrimination that has ever happened was because of race. That is why people learn to discriminate against other people. If we want to tear these systems down that discriminate against LGBTQ people, that discriminate against whatever it is, we have to tear down institutionalized racism first, because that is the method and the mode and the learning system by which people learn to discriminate against everyone else. So we have to tear that down first. So I'm looking at you, my white LGBTQ community. this is where we have to start. We have to tear down institutionalized racism, and that's not something that we can tear away from the current system. We have to structurally change the current system because it's so ingrained. It's not like taking a sidecar off of a scooter. That's not the kind of change we're talking about. We're talking about setting the scooter on fire and building something new. I'm not advocating to set any vehicles on fire.
Just to be clear.
Be
Not
clear
even
on
your
that.
own.
What?
Not even your own vehicle.
Not even my own vehicle. No vehicle set on fire. But anyways, I want to thank you, Anya, for running. I want to thank you for taking the brunt of everything that comes at you when you're a candidate. I can't even imagine what. I know it's hard enough. I can't even begin to fathom what that's like being a Black woman and running. And I want to thank you for having the courage to step out there and continuing on. I know we're going to do everything we can from this side of the state to help you win. And I think you will. I know your elections had some exciting developments in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for us to be in the State House together and get some real stuff done. I know Constance is excited to visit us at the State
And
House.
throw a couple of extras in there. There's a few more we're gonna try to shoot up in there with y'all. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much again, and everybody that's watching. We dropped the link to Anya's campaign to donate. So please go click that. Everything helps, no matter what. Please go. Even just 50 cents or $1 helps. It helps in so many different ways we can't even explain.
Absolutely.
But let's not play. Y'all need to open your checkbooks up a little bit more.
Right, give them some money. Give them some money. We try
every amount counts.
Hey,
yeah. So
I need Marquita Bradshaw and you both to send us some teas up here so we can wear it around the city around here and help show that support for y'all so they know.
I would love to do that. As soon as everything is lifted, I would love to do that.
Some t-shirts up here. We sure do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's gonna be a crazy year. Remember, everybody, the 3 important dates. The most important date right now, the only one I need you to remember is August the 6th.
Your birthday.
Because it's my birthday.
Yay!
but also there's an election that day.
Yeah.
But it's also my birthday. So if you need a reason to donate to our campaigns, you can put my birthday on there. It's fine. But August the 6th is an important election. Don't be tricked into thinking that November is the next time you have to exercise your right. You got to do it in August, because I won't even go into why you need to do it. You just need to do it. If you get a chance to vote, you need to go vote. So go find the progressives that are running in your area. Vote for them in August. Early voting starts on July the 17th. And you can request a absentee ballot starting on May the 8th. And trust me, we're going to be in your face with how to request that absentee ballot on May the 8th. So we'll be all over that. You can check out, we're going to also be sharing some stuff over the next week about how you can help pressure the state legislature and the governor to allow mail-in voting for everyone. So people don't want to do that because it makes it way easy to vote. And there are a bunch of reasons why they don't want to, but we want to, and we know that it will let people be heard if you can get that mail-in ballot for everybody. So we're going to be pushing that, but please, at the very least, share our message out, take our Facebook page, share it, Twitter, Instagram, all the stuff. You can share that message out, remove hate. If you see somebody handing out those stupid racist, I don't even have the language to like denounce the KKK enough, but if you see somebody handing that crap out, I don't want to tell you, but do something about it, right? If you're privileged enough to have the ability to do something about it, do something about it. So there's a lot of action items coming out of this call tonight. I hope that you will act on all of them. We will continue to share stuff out. If you came here and it's the first time you saw either Anya or I, please go like our Facebook pages and follow us on Twitter and Instagram and the like. We would love to have you join the conversation. Again, Anya, thank you so much for coming. I know that we're going to talk more over the next few months.
Absolutely.
So,
looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Constance. Thanks, Nathan. It's good to see y'all as always.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
everybody out there for coming. Bye.